Oh, hi, everybody. My name is Matt Storrs, and welcome to Mattsplaining. On today's episode, I have an expert on who I'm very excited to speak with about their area of expertise. Expert, please introduce yourself and tell us what you're an expert in.
Hi, I'm Kristin Lytie, and I wouldn't say expert so much as I'm really passionate about union organizing.
Fantastic. I feel that I am pretty knowledgeable about union organizing. I think that the most important thing that, from what I've learned from my previous discussions with regards to unions, is that you need to find the right place to organize. You think that doing it at the office, at the Starbucks, at the Waterburger, or whatever it is, would be the primary place because that's where everybody works. But the thing is, anytime anybody invites you to an after work meeting, an after work, well, it's not, they say it's a party, you want to get drinks after work. But really, what it is you got to say yes because most of the time, if you guys are going go-kart racing is one of the primary places that unions have started to organize in the last decade because you go and you have this community event or this team building exercise. But if it's a team building exercise that your managers aren't at, you got to say, huh, that's a really weird thing. Why would we go to a thing that normally managers would organize? Why are we going to laser tag? And the thing is, if you go to laser tag and you realize, hey, we're working as a team and we're taking down, whomever the children most likely that you're playing against, you realize like that could be us against the managers. And even worse so, a lot of management, there's been a big decrease in the availability of laser tag arenas in the last couple decades because managers were using it too often as a team building exercise and they would have their teams going against the management, and then they realized the team was like, oh, we are just throttling and just beating the, I guess I don't know if you can beat somebody senseless with a laser, so to speak, but they were defeating them handedly. And they realized, hey, we should probably unionize because we have the skill set that is definitely beating these managers. They don't have adequate, they don't even they give up the high ground. They don't know what they're doing. So beyond the go-kart racing and the laser tag arenas and the pizza parties, all things of the standard 1990s management management style, trying to boost morale, and those things now being used by people with initiative and get go to establish a union. I think that one of the most important things is to read your union bylaws as best you can, to talk to who your union representative is. Oftentimes, a lot of union representatives are older and they kind of have the old guard. So you might have an instance where they're still using Word Perfect or they're using Word 98, and you need to go in and make sure that things are properly formatted if you're sending things to them to make sure that they're able to open them. And that can be kind of difficult because you might have to talk to them and say, hey, I got this formal complaint online. And they're like, wait, how do I get there? And then that's a difficult thing because you're having to explain how to get on the Google and to find the things that your manager said because they don't have that link available. And so that can be kind of stressful for folks. And I think that one of the things with unionizing is that we're trying to get what's best for people. And sometimes that can be a little difficult to come together and agree on what is best within that collective whole. And then presenting that to management and owners and everything like that, it's a process of everybody ends up getting something that they want, but also sometimes getting things that they don't fully want. But you realize the things that you truly need. And ultimately, that can be a really, really beneficial thing because it improves morale, it improves productivity, and it puts people in a position where they're going to actively seek out other people to come in because they know their friends are going to get taken care of, their families are going to get taken care of, and you're going to have a much better method of living And you're not going to have to worry about going to the laser tag arenas or anything like that. You can just go whenever you want. And you can organize your own events with your own family, with your own friends, and you're not going to be in a position where you need that social aspect to make sure that your main social group is that union. And ultimately, one thing I will say this, union halls, a lot of those places, they're in dire need of renovation. You would think that unions would likely know contractors and renovation people that would be able to fix up those union halls, but not so much. A lot of 1960s, 1970s wood paneling still remains. And that's one thing that hopefully in this new guard and this new set of leadership in unions, we can get some renovations done and, kind of spruce up those places. Now, based on what you've heard so far, about how much of that would you say was accurate?
Okay, if we were doing a strike authorization vote, I would say maybe we'd come in at like 40%.
Okay, we're okay. That would be, I don't think that we would get to the strike, but I'll take it. Yeah, tell me what I got wrong. Tell me about union organizing.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of your high level themes were really spot on, like
Hmm.
talking about place in terms of where do we have these conversations about advocating for change in the workplace. Like when you're first starting to organize a union in a work site that doesn't have a union, right? We want to take into effect count the power dynamics
Hmm.
of that situation. And like no one's going to feel comfortable talking about something they feel angry about or disrespected by when the boss could walk in at any moment.
Right.
So a lot of times until we build a really solid core in the work site, we will encourage those conversations to happen in bars or restaurants. My first 6 years of my career, I was organizing new units throughout the Chicagoland area and frequently would just take over a Panera and be like, this is a union meeting now. And it was great because the
Fantastic.
staff never cared. When we were organizing Walmart, sometimes I would just hang out in the bathroom for a
Hmm.
couple hours and like people come in and we would chat there because we could see who's coming in and out. It was a monitored safe space.
Right.
But paying attention to that is really important because so many people, they get excited about the idea of creating true democracy in their workplace and they run out and try to talk to as many people as they can when in those situations we really need to be strategic. You need to find the leaders that are trusted and respected, bring them on board and start creating your core committee before you go public. And then, once you have the majority of your coworkers on board, then you start having those conversations in the workplace to catch
Hmm.
the people who haven't committed yet to show like we're changing this culture. This is what we're all about. Get on board.
Right. Absolutely. What sort of things do you look for when you're looking at people that could potentially be leaders in those sort of circumstances?
Yeah, generally I look for people who aren't reactionary, that are
Okay.
thoughtful, that when you ask them a question, they kind of hold back a second and really think it over. People that other people go to ask questions of, people that have a lot of connections within the workplace. And it's
Hmm.
always people that don't think they should be a leader that are the best leaders.
Right. The person that's kind of thrust into it and willing to make a compromise of what's right, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
What are some of the kind of risk factors that you kind of encounter when putting yourself in like a bathroom, but like what are some of those fears and concerns that you are kind of trying to avoid?
Yeah. Well, I would say, organizing new units, especially in public sector, it is there's a lot more risk than the work I do
Hmm.
now. That was going to visit people at their homes based on addresses that their coworkers gave me. So it was a lot of showing up alone at a house, being like, "Hi, I'm with the union." The first union I worked for, there were particular work sites that they told us not to go to just because, those employers had used violence against past organizers, people calling the cops on you to get you out of the work site. That's pretty common. And oh, actually, that union too, we had to fill out these timesheets of where we were every day. And I
Hmm.
was like, oh, is that, so you can catch up and see if we're being lazy, kind of laughing. And my director was like, no, that's if you go missing, we know where to look. I was like, oh,
Oh, good Lord. Yeah, that's a little extreme.
yeah. I mean, we are talking about power dynamics and people's money, and oppression of unions has a very long international history. So I think in America, we are a bit sheltered from that, but in other countries around the world, it's not uncommon for people who do my job to disappear.
Oh, wow. That is so scary. What are some of the things that people could look to in their work environment that would make them recognize the need for a union?
Yeah, I'd say it depends on what kind of work you do. But
Mhm.
what brought me to the work was health and safety concerns. My dad was almost killed in a paper mill. And I think the safety precautions that your company takes is a direct expression of how much they value you as an employee.
Right.
So looking around and seeing what they're sacrificing to make more money based off of your safety
Hmm.
is always a very rich conversation. I will also say we're kind of, as a labor movement, transforming the way we organize with workplaces now are more gig economy. They're more, the worker is in charge of where they work, how they work, especially like with remote work. So that is changing the way we organize. I
Hmm.
talk a lot more on Zoom than I have in the past. Like I have on my Twitter that if you're interested in organizing your workplace, I'll do a Zoom meeting with you and just talk through some questions and issues. So in that way, it is really cool. But man, nothing beats an in-person meeting, getting everybody together in the same room. You just feel that energy and people start to see that they have the same values and they build this momentum, and then it just naturally leads towards this plan of action.
Yeah, and that sounds like that would be very, very energizing, if that makes sense.
It
It,
is. It
yeah,
lights my brain up. It's so good.
that's wonderful. What are some of your favorite experiences you've had with organizing?
Yeah, I would say one was a phlebotomist in Chicago. We're organizing. It was about a unit of 200, mostly women who had tried to organize with the Teamsters a few years back and lost their election. And,
Hmm.
being there with them on that day where they counted the votes, like counting the votes is always it's such a surreal moment because like you have everyone's hard work and effort over the last year or so that went into this campaign. And then you have, your board agent from the National Labor Relations Board and the boss. And you're all just supposed to sit in this room and count votes like it's very calm and chill, but you're like,
It sounds like it would be pretty intense, very
it's
stressed.
and then, of course, we won. We won like a very high percentage. I think we came in at like 78,
Oh, wow.
possibly 80s. Yeah, and we all just screamed and did a little dance, and that was really great. And now I work for the Wisconsin Teachers Union. And
Excellent.
last summer, we had a campaign with one of the locals I work with who hadn't really mobilized membership before. So they mobilized folks to go to the school board. And then we had a follow up meeting at their union hall to do a certification vote of that proposal that was given by the administrators. And, watching this leader that I've worked with for like maybe like 4 years now.
Hmm.
She stood up there and gave this speech about how, I know a lot of the laws are limiting us, but I just want to say, look what we can do. Look around. Look how many people are here. Look what we did. And her name's Beth. And seeing her say that and just feel that power, like, oh man, it was amazing.
Yeah, and it feels like it kind of, correct me if I'm wrong in this assertion, but something of helping people recognize their talents as well as their ability to help others, if that makes sense. Like being like, no, like there is this problem and you have firsthand knowledge and you shouldn't have to deal with this. And we can do something about it, but we need you to help do something too. And I think, yeah.
Absolutely. And that's kind of why I shy away from the word expert because organizing is all an art form, right? And I really take a lot from the idea of popular education, which is a model that believes like when you're working with adults, all adults have valuable skills and experience that they bring to the table. And when everybody brings a little piece to the table, and it's not a top-down structure of me, I'm the organizer, I know everything, I tell you what to do, but it's a model of everybody brings this piece that they care about, that they know about, that they're really skilled at. Like when you build a team that way, you're unstoppable.
Absolutely. And it reminds me of, it's not necessarily one-to-one with unionizing, but when I was younger, I had a lot of friends that were tempted to go into volunteer work, but they were like, well, I don't really want to volunteer because all I'm going to be doing is like doing phone calls or whatever. And it's like I have this skill set of being, they worked in tech. And so they're like, well, I could redesign their website. And I'm like, well, eventually you can get to a point where you can redesign their website, but they got to get to know you and they got to know what your skills are and you got to demonstrate your passion. And unfortunately, in those circumstances, those intake forms, eventually you meet the people and you work together and you see how everybody can, kind of work together towards that goal. And it seems like that's somewhat similar in unions, but also at the same time, like there's kind of a sit down of like, okay, what skills do all of us have? How can we help?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, nonprofits most of them don't believe in structural change. And I think that's one of
Hmm.
the biggest differences between them and unions. So, they operate off a model that wants to aid and do triage, but isn't addressing structural change. So
Hmm.
sometimes their models are influenced by that as well.
Okay,
Like,
I could see.
they don't want you to be your true, unique, most talented self. They want you to fill this spot.
Right.
And I will say, I'm operating of a place of like ideal unionism.
Mm.
Just want to express we are what we marinate in. So, like all the baggage we collect as humans, we can bring that to our union's agendas, not intentionally, of course, but that's why I liked what you brought up about reading the bylaws. There are some unions where it's incredibly difficult to get their bylaws because that's the key to kind of cracking open leadership and
Hmm.
members creating more actual democracy within their union.
Yeah,
I always tell
that
people read your bylaws, read your contract as well if you have one.
absolutely. That's so, so important. If people wanted to learn more about you or learn more about unions, where would you recommend that they go?
Yes, I would say the number one spot I go to is Labor Notes, and
Okay.
they have an excellent book called Secrets of a Successful Organizer. I mean, these are, I think, people that are at top of the field doing the best in the labor movement, doing the best work, Jane McAlevey, people like that. And then the other book I would recommend is Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown.
Cool.
She's just an incredibly thoughtful activist who, she's often talked about organizing being like science fiction because you're imagining a new world. And I just love that so much because I think organizing is all about having hope.
Yeah, and that is perfect. Yeah, that's absolutely wonderful. And with regard to you, where can people find out what you're doing?
Yeah, I have my website, KristinLytie.com, and I'm Kristin Lytie on all the socials. And you can buy my new album this week. It is now in the pre-release until April 25th, and then it drops on April 26th. And the vinyl will be available in May. It's my first album. It's called Disassociation Vacation, because my joke for having a little me time.
That's very good. I like that.
Yeah, the
Okay.
album is going to be released on Burn This Records out of LA. That's Brandy Posey's new record label, and I'm really excited for it.
This has been just a absolute delight for me. I really appreciate it. I really can't thank you enough. Uh,
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love chatting about this topic, so it's always nice to just blah all about it.
Perfect. Fantastic. My name is Matt Storrs, and this has been Mattsplaining. Before we go today, I want to thank Ryan Lawson, my dear friend and all around okay guy, for making the theme music for Mattsplaining. And if anyone needs music production or mixing services for any of their projects, Ryan can be reached at beatblenderstudios@gmail.com or at Beat Blender Studios on Instagram and TikTok.